Hi everyone, welcome to the AWX office hours on Tuesday, the 11th of June. We've got two topics on the agenda today. Firstly, myself and Shane will be talking a little bit about some ideas and feedback we'd like on AWX and CalVer. And then secondly, Tivo is going to be talking a little bit about the new platform UI and what type of feedback we'd like on that. So I'm going to hand over to Shane. Thanks.
Hey folks, it's been a long time since I've actually been able to attend this meeting, so nice to see the people from the community that I haven't seen for a while. Okay, so for those that don't know who I am, my name is Shane. I'm one of the engineers that works on the Ansible team here at Red Hat. I was one of the first engineers that was hired after the Ansible acquisition, so I've been around for little over 8 years now. So I've kind of, I was actually one of the developers that got Tower at the time ready to open source. Helped with the very first release of AWX. You've probably seen my name or face around if you've been, hanging around the repo for a while. So yeah, that's just a little bit about who I am. And the reason that I am here to have a conversation with the broader group is that there was a blog post a week or two ago that sparked some questions in terms of what does that actually mean? And as some people kind of pointed out or noticed, we didn't say a whole lot about what we're doing. And that was intentional because we want that to be a dialogue, and we want that to be something that we engage the community and our users in sort of collaboration, figuring out what the future of AWX looks like. There have been various pain points over the years in terms of our ability to support the community. There have been some pain points just on the technical side in terms of the scope of AWX. It's gotten quite large over the years. So we're starting to think about how to enable ourselves as a project to move faster and kind of increase our velocity to iterate on features that we're building. And ultimately just increase the quality of the software. I can speak for myself personally. I think that open source results in better quality software, more secure software. So there were some assumptions that I think people made in terms of what that blog post was trying to say in terms of Red Hat, changing the license or pulling, a hashy. That's not what we're doing. We are not changing any licenses. We are going to collaborate with the community to figure out how we kind of evolve this project. So with that being said, the first part, like I mentioned, we're thinking about how to increase our own velocity. So right now, we publish AWX. We, every 2-ish weeks, publish a new release of AWX. And we kind of do CalVer, but it's always been a one-way street. We've never supported multiple streams of AWX. It's always been the bleeding edge, the developer edge. We just cut releases over time. And one thing that we're trying to do is just spend less time curating the bits that get released every 2 or 3 weeks upstream. That's an enormous amount of work in terms of the coordination and the kind of release activities. And we're looking to kind of streamline and automate that as much as possible. So one of the directions that we're thinking that we're going to head in is nightly builds of AWX rather than every 2-week snapshots. And to kind of reinforce our intention of AWX being a fast-moving project, we're thinking CalVer never really made sense for AWX beyond signifying breaking changes and new features. And there are other ways for us to do that with release notes and However we choose to kind of call out that this change of commits will result in some action needing to be taken, we can figure out what that looks like. But the versioning of AWX, I personally would really like that to be automated as much as possible. And to just basically call out, this is a breaking change. This is something that you'll need to migrate. And there might be things that land in AWX that aren't fully baked because it is the development branch. So we are trying to figure out what it looks like to move this project along at a faster pace. And then once we have a bit more velocity and a feedback loop that allows us to kind of make changes more flexibly and quickly, how do we start pulling things apart into more services and scale them independently? I won't get too much into the architecture of AWX, but it's grown into quite a beast over time. We've run into a lot of challenges trying to scale the thing in some large environments. So a lot of the changes that we're thinking about making is just how do we continue to serve our customer base and our user base that is grown to demand more and more out of the software over time. So I'll shut up for a bit. I want this to be as much of a dialogue as people feel comfortable engaging in. But if people have questions, feel free to come off of mute and just chat or drop notes in the, I don't know, where do we collect feedback for these things these days?
Yeah, so it's in Google Chat. We're a small group here, so hit the hand button at the bottom if you want to talk. Obviously, no, not everyone might not want to, right? This has been recorded, but feel free to put stuff in the text chat. As is often the way with these things, once you've had a cup of tea or coffee or beverage of choice, you'll probably have some questions. So feel free to put that in Matrix. Linked off our README page on AWX. We'll be publishing a post on the AWX forum. That'll go in probably end of next week, I hope. I'll go and backlink that to this GitHub issue and try and circulate that link round. So let me talk a little bit about, so I'm Gundalow. I've been with Ansible for almost 8 years, just after acquisition, like Shane. I built the original Ansible community engineering team, and I'm really excited to have a chance to chat with you folks today. One of the bits I'm here to help with is to make sure that we, set all this up for success, that we talking about ideas, getting some feedback before we start doing any implementation, right? We spent a lot of time building up the forum. So that's forum.ansible.com. We've really seen that work. Over the last release, there's been great discussions about things like the hop node. We've got feedback, found bugs, how to improve the design, and that's what's really key here, right? David just put a great comment in chat. It takes way too long, as today to go and build AWX, and that's something we should definitely go and work on. Yeah, any questions, ideas, concerns so far? Had anyone seen the blog post before? You can use a little emoji, hands up, hands down.
So I'm just curious, what's the impact on like deployability and usability of AWX from your perspectives outside of using the downstream of automation controller? I mean, is it really seen as viable to even use AWX given that high of a release cadence, or is it really more of a push to automation controller?
It's definitely not a push to automation controller. It is us struggling to maintain the project and product over time. In terms of what it means for the viability of AWX, we're not going to break it. We're still going to run the same test that we do today. There is a fair amount of work that goes into making sure that it doesn't regress. We have our upstream tests, and then we have additional testing that goes through our partners and internal regression suites. And any breakage that slips through will result in a fix going upstream. We're not changing our development model. We're still the GitHub project is where active development happens. Occasionally, there might be periods of instability. That's happened before. If you've been a user for a while, I'm sure you've seen some of the kind of rough patches as we've landed new features or, introduced accidental bugs. But in terms of the viability of deploying AWX, I think one of the important things that maybe I should reiterate is like the intention of AWX. And for myself, and I think Red Hat as a company, like I mentioned earlier, open source results in better software. So we don't want less contributions, we want more. So we are specifically interested in the individuals and companies out there that are able to follow at a pretty fast pace and can help us to develop features and validate changes as we're making them in order to make sure that ultimately it doesn't regress for the community or the people that pay for the product. So I'm not sure if that added any insight into kind of what we're trying to do or why we're doing it, but yeah, I would hope that you still continue to deploy AWX. And in the unlikely event that something breaks, either open an issue or a patch.
Yeah, that's really the concern there, right? So, the primary method being the Kubernetes operator for AWX, and really for OpenShift-driven automation controller. Will that, continue to be the case for AWX? Still, put the AWX operator out there, and then, instead of tracking essentially every 2 weeks, you're tracking daily, potentially?
I'm not going to pretend like we have all of the answers right now. In terms of what it looks like to publish the operator going forward, we're going to have some conversations there. I don't know what all of the tooling is for Operator Hub around fast releases or nightly builds. We haven't had that conversation yet, but nothing is changing right now in terms of the artifacts that are going to get released. Just the versioning and the cadence is what we're changing, at least at this point in time.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not worried, but I'm also not using AWX in production. So it's a lot safer, obviously.
Yeah, and let me just reinforce, right? Like, I know that we don't have all the answers. We're not even got a full list of proposals yet. And that's why we're talking with you folks, right? You are community, you very, very smart folks, right? So have a noodle on this, have a think on this. When we, you know how to reach us, be it Matrix, GitHub issues, forum posts, right? Just start throwing random ideas at us and we'll see sort of what trends, what thoughts there are, what concerns. And we can see, like, if we start to see some themes around there. I mean, one thing we're going to have to do is our release process, as you occasionally see for AWX, isn't perfect. And that's something we need to spend some time on. That will let us do more frequent releases. I don't know if we're necessarily going to end up doing nightly releases, but because that is a chunk of work and maybe that's going too fast. But more frequently than every 2 weeks, I think is at least the aim, right?
Yep. No, I certainly can appreciate that. And, as long as there's ways for individuals to, pin within Operator to say like, hey, I got to stay 2 behind because something's broke right now. I don't see a problem with that, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it will look like, but it's all based on GitHub tags, right? So there'll be some tag, some version, probably in the form of 4 digits for a year, 2 for a month, and 2 for a day. And let's hope we don't need too many dash revisions if we break something totally on a day. But if we have, well, like you say, you can just go back a release.
Yeah, wait for the dust to settle for a few days and then turn it back on.
Yeah.
Just saw a comment from Michael in the sidebar. Instead of switching to nightly builds, I thought Matthew was talking in his blog post about the split of AWX into separate upstream projects, as he mentioned a few weeks ago. Yeah, like I mentioned, we're thinking about how to split things apart into different services. How that all coalesces back together upstream and in the product is something that, like I mentioned, we're making a conversation with the user base in the community. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess we will have a place for people to submit questions and feedback. Reach out on Matrix, however else the other people here tell you to reach out. But yeah, thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thanks very much for the questions, folks. As I said, we'll make sure we communicate often and early with everyone. Can't do this without you, so like keep us honest, give us your feedback. I know Shane's got to drop in 10 minutes. Oh, Kim, over to you if you want to go off mute and talk.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I didn't realize you were wrapping up so quick. I had a question in the chat. So we're using AWX, like really old, I don't want to say how old, in production. And is there any way to track a stable branch with this rapid dev approach? Is there any, I mean, that's not your focus, I guess.
No, that's not our focus. Honestly, that is one of the reasons that we're trying to move in this different direction, is because the purpose of AWX is to be the development branch, and we don't get a whole lot of value out of people giving us feedback on things that we released years ago. So I would say that no, there is no plan for a stable branch of AWX. The develop branch is stable most of the time, but we're a small team and we really can't dedicate time to much else.
So as we move forward with major, minor versions, I'm afraid we'd have to move major. It's really on us to do further testing for compatibility.
Yeah,
that's fine. I just, yeah. I mean, I guess,
no, good question.
I would have expected to see something that's like, okay, we haven't had any issues with this version reported, or there's a couple really bad ones here. If we could fix a couple low hanging fruit on this, that would still be stable, or that sort of thing. I know you can't go back and meet, you know, I don't know. Yeah, you get the nightly. I guess I'd expect some focus on keeping like aware of what is really well tested. What are people really using if they're not on the bleeding edge?
Yeah, and I mean that knowledge we would need to extract from our issue queue and capture that somewhere. That may be something that evolves over time. That may be something that the community helps us to compile and keep track of over time, which versions of AWX have particular bugs. But again, AWX is the development branch, and one of the reasons for us moving in this direction is that we already don't have enough time to balance all of our different priorities.
With CalVer, I mean, you know, I know I'm not going to be too scared about any. I'll hardly even think twice about upgrading to a point release. Not too concerned about a minor, but I would be well aware of a major changes. Like I'd want to put that off for a while.
Yeah, and how we call out and communicate changes and breaking changes is something that we'll need to figure out as we go through this.
Okay, is there any stats on like how like downloads of who's downloading what version? Some sites have that kind of thing. Like,
I don't.
What are a lot of people using? And there's no. I guess I don't want feedback. I don't want to be connected to that. But it'd be lovely if you had that kind of sense of who's heavily using what version. That sort of thing. Yeah.
I can try to find some stats from Quay, but I don't have them available at the moment.
Yeah, we can have a dig at that. With my community engineering hat on, I'll just put some like health warnings around those type of stats, because we've looked at it for say PyPI for the Ansible core and the Ansible community package. Like one download is that someone using it in a GitHub action, and this is different for Ansible core because we're using it everywhere. Is it whatever 10,000 GitHub actions running in a CI/CD pipeline, or has someone downloaded it once and put it in their Artifactory or whatever cache locally? So there's, you can't necessarily trust them. You can get trends.
Yeah, devil in the details there. Yeah.
But no, that's a really good call. I mean, we occasionally still see bug reports from people running, I don't know, AWX 18, which is 3+ years old at this point, and yeah, I know upgrading's a pain, but like the command jokes, that's a bit old, right? There's definitely no bugs in those versions, right?
Okay. Yeah, our upgrade challenges are all centered around our OpenShift resources. So we've been blocked for a year trying to get moving forward there. Not on you. All right. Thanks.
No, great
Yeah,
question.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Cool. And I should clarify that this meeting is scheduled for another 35 minutes, assuming there are questions. Sorry, it's Shane that's got to disappear in 5 minutes, but the rest of us
Yeah.
are all here. So, you know, if anyone's got any more awkward questions, do them now while Shane's still here. Otherwise, I'll need to go out and get some answers for folks. Anyone nervous? Were people on the nervous to happy to ambivalent or think it's okay?
So again, not using it in production, but people I interact with are, and I would say they probably echo Kim's sentiment, and feel it's going to be a lot more difficult to continue to use it in production, given that kind of cadence. I can certainly appreciate why from a development pattern. Makes total sense what you guys want to do. But it does create this kind of antithetical cross, right? You want feedback, you want people using it, but at the same time, it's becoming more difficult to use, is the perception, at least. So that's going to be a lot of the challenge. So and that's why I was kind of hinting at, you know, as long as there's strong controls within the operator of saying, I want to be at this version, I'm ready to try this version. Oh, that didn't work, and I want to come back to this version. I think that's where success can be found, while, you know, upping your cadence.
Yeah, no, perfectly well put. I think we'll steal some of those words for the forum post. And you touch on a good point here, right? There's perceived problems and there's real problems, and we need to sort of iterate through both of those lists. And you know, I'm a big believer in clear documentation to help with these things. You know, and like I said, that's why we're not throwing a PR out here or hitting merge on something at the end of this meeting. We don't even have a PR raised yet, right? Because we need feedback. We need to understand what are the user cases we're not thought of, right? That's where the community really shines, and we've seen that time and time again. Cool. Well, thanks very much.
I do have an architectural question. We didn't get into it at Summit too much, you know, kind of when we were talking about breaking down AWX into different components. How much of that do we think we'll see, you know, for folks that are on the open source side, right? It's been pretty transparent historically. You could get, you know, essentially automation controller in the form of AWX. If you needed it, you could go get Galaxy NG, right? So you essentially could build your own platform, if you will. Are we going to see a split out? So there's maybe going to be a collection potentially of AWX projects that are now going to have to get installed, each potentially with own operators. I mean, has there been any kind of thought or vision into that yet about how that break apart may pan out?
No real specifics around that level of kind of refactoring. Some other ideas that we do have is around pulling code out into libraries that you then install as packages into AWX and other parts of the platform to make development easier on us. And rather than making the change in 3 different places, you make it in one place and then bump the dependency that you're consuming in the other places. So that's something that I think will be immediately actionable for things like, well, another idea that's pretty cool is exposing more like plugin interfaces for AWX. So like the credential types and the authentication login strategies. Those things are already plugins in the code, but you have to add it directly to the code base. So just more ways of bolting on functionality that don't require us to have a monolithic app in AWX. There are even some considerations on the product side that aren't immediately obvious on the open source side, because we have to maintain multiple streams of this thing. So if there's, you know, a bug in the dispatcher or the task manager, we fix that upstream first and then have to backport it to 3 or 4 different versions, and the shape of the code can change across different, years of maintaining, different branches of a product. So it'll give us the ability to make the code change in that one library, and then the versions that we have to support, we can just bump the version on all of those and test and make sure that it works. Beyond that, like different microservices, and we're thinking about like, what does it look like to build essentially a codified interface for the entire automation platform? And obviously a certain subsection of that will be the interfaces of AWX. But then how do you make them talk together better? Right now, it's kind of duct taped with HTTP calls, and you have to like create a credential over here, and the way that things talk to each other doesn't feel super native. So like we're thinking about like maybe it makes sense for like an inter-service communication layer for us to talk over for these things, which might not immediately be applicable to the upstream, but opens up some interesting possibilities for basically programmatically interfacing with the different components. So sorry, we don't have a lot of specifics. We're just talking right now and trying to figure out the right direction forward.
You're good. No, cool. Random question. Do any of you have interactions on the runner and navigator side, or is that a different community team?
Runner, yes. Navigator, I don't think on this call.
Okay.
No, but if I don't know, do you use the forum, Tim? So forum.com. A lot of the dev, so it's the dev tools team that I would navigator. So a lot of those folks are on there. If you want to create a post there, they'll see it.
Okay.
And as always, I'm Gundalow on most places online. So if you're not getting any response from anyone, feel free to DM me.
Cool.
Send me a message.
So the reason I ask is, and I can post this to the forum, but this is something I've been tracking for a while. Just a pull request I wrote. I'm sure it's of horrible quality for runner, but it affects navigator as well. And it's just about SSH agent passing, in my case with Mac OS. So it's gone stale, right? I don't even remember how long ago I wrote it.
Yeah, I can ping some folks internally and get an update on that.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it.
Cool. I appreciate you raising that. And yeah, cool. So I know Shane's gone. So, but if you are any other questions, like I said, let us know. I'm going to keep on mentioning the forum every 5 minutes because it's something we're really proud of and it's working well. Cool. So next, I believe it's TiVo is going to talk a little bit about the upcoming changes around the platform UI and feedback.
Okay, thanks. I'm TiVo. I'm on the Ansible team, and I'm involved in a number of community efforts, including AWX and operator engineering. I also help with issues and PR triage, and my topic today involves that. So I just wanted to let you know that we've been coming across a lot of issues in the AWX repo regarding the UI, when bugs arise. In the tech preview UI portion of the AWX user interface. So if you find problems with that, go ahead and log them in another repo that I'm going to post in the chat. That way the UI engineering team can look at those and either address them or table them, because of another effort that they're working on to decouple that from, just the standalone portion, and having other factors involved that may not get fixed or may not get merged. So if you could just log them in to that repo right there that I posted in the chat, we can get them addressed more quickly.
Also, I think the new UI next is getting ready to replace our existing UI. It's probably like 90% feature parity right now, and we are looking for help for finding out what doesn't work. So in a couple months, we're probably gonna flip the UI around where the new UI will become the default, while still keeping the old UI as a backup. So please, please, please help us use the new UI, help us find bugs, and I really want to delete the UI code from the AWX repo.
Let's do a little bit more audience participation. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see the little emoji bottom right. Can I get a thumbs down if you've not had a chance to look at the new UI? So click I forget what the banner is it swapped to BTUI. So Tim hasn't, thank you, I appreciate, and Kim hasn't, cool, I appreciate the honesty. Cool. Anyone want to say why that is? It's a new beta thing and it's scary, or it's fundamentally broken? I'm just sort of wondering how folks are finding it at the moment.
For me, unless it's deployed without knowing. So maybe I have seen it? Question mark.
So if you go to the dashboard, there should be a banner saying, hey, click this to go to the new UI.
I will check it out after the call, for sure.
It's got dark mode.
And I can see Kim put in just no time and resources to test stuff. Yeah, you're not the only one that says that. It's true for so many internal folks. We can't always put things behind a feature flag. The UI has been quite nice that we've been able to do that. So for folks that are like the bleeding edge or the leading edge, you can sort of click the button and have a play around with it, which is great.
Is this a newer UI than comes with Ansible AWX 21.13? Because I thought we switched to the new UI back in AWX 21.
Yeah, it's a new UI.
A newer new UI. Got it. Then in that case, I have not seen the newer new UI. Okay.
And I can see people asking if we've got a picture of it, a screenshot. That's a really good question. I'm not sure if we do have anything. But this feels like a good thing for me to put on the forum. So we'll draft up some little notes about how to enable it. Maybe put a couple of screenshots in, because like I said, it's going to become the default thing, and at some point the old UI, apparently I get told off if I call it legacy UI, the old UI will go away. So if you have a bit of time to make sure all your workflows, everything works for you, it's good to get the feedback in advance, right? Cool. So I think that's all we had on the agenda. But like I said, folks are still here. So if any other questions about anything we've talked about so far, or bugs people are hitting, or ideas for the future, this is a great opportunity to chat with got a good chunk of the controller team, controller developers. So yeah, if any questions, feel free to jump off mic or chuck something in the chat.
Thanks, Seth. I saw your chat message.
Would it be helpful if I show the new UI right quick?
Yeah, if you want to show just that window.
Sure. Oops. Right. There's just that window thing. Hold on. There we go. So this is the new UI. I don't know if you all seen it, but like on the old UI, you should see a banner that brings you to the new UI. Like I don't even build a new old UI these days. But yeah, try it out. It looks nice. It's got dark mode. I know I'm obsessed about it. I'm sorry.
You're good. I'd say my only thought on UI in general, and I was just looking at the quick bit you showed there, is how wide stuff has felt historically. And it almost looks like, at least on the left-hand menu, maybe stuff is a little bit more compact, which for me would be a welcome change.
The information is definitely more condensed in the new UI.
Okay.
Like overall, I like it.
Cool. I'll give it a whirl.
Feedback's welcome. Please try it out. Like, we will be deleting the old UI. No timeline, but like it's a eventuality.
Cool. And we have dark mode.
Yes.
Cool. Any other questions? Cool. So my only ask, my homework for everyone is, if you're not signed up on the forum, please go and do that. You know, that's how we're going to get feedback from everyone. More and more stuff's moving to the forum. The Bullhorn, the Ansible community newsletter is moving there. Hopefully at some point we're actually going to go and make the old Google groups read only. AWX has already moved over, so that's good. You know, trying to reduce the fragmentation, make it easier for everyone to communicate and understand what's going on. Any final questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up, folks. Cool. Really, really, honestly, do appreciate all the discussion. This looks great. So yeah, so as always, we'll get this recorded and we'll put it on YouTube. That'll be linked back from Matrix and the forum, and I think we put it on the GitHub issue as well. Hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have the new forum post that goes into a little bit more detail about the things we're thinking. That's a great place to come and, you know, give your ideas. Like I said, none of this stuff's set in stone, right? So soon we have feedback and ideas, the better. Jake.
Just one thing, since I've been working on it, and we will be working on it, for the new, like, nothing's set in stone yet, but for like all of the new builds and everything like that, we're going to do all of that in AWX. So if anybody wants to be included or see things or want something, we'll be doing all of that there. So if you want to be included or even contribute to it, all that'll be done there. So I just wanted to put that out there. When that happens, I have no idea, but whatever we change will be done, and we'll probably have a forum post about it. And probably come up here too. I'm assuming that's why Hal unmuted. I guess not. That's all.
So David just asked in chat, if things are going to get moved out to a repo, would the AWX or the Ansible.controller repo be part of that? We're not sure, right? I know you're probably getting a little bit bored of me saying we don't know, but this is early days. Some things it makes sense to move out, especially if they're sort of packaged and released separately. But generally, the collection and the document, you know, we moved all the documentation, the upstream documentation into the AWX repo fairly recently. Having the docs and the collection and the main bit of code in lockstep, as in the same repo, is generally a good thing. They have to be versioned together. Yeah, there might be other discussions I'm not aware of, but I don't think anything's specifically being talked about that. But it's a good question. Thanks, David. David, I don't know if there's anything sort of extra context behind your question. If you've got a concern or you think there's an opportunity to do something different, love to hear that.
Not, I don't know, I guess specifically too much. It, in some ways, like, I mean, I can see some advantages of having it in the repo, but, you know, it also has a lot of primary just like API. So like only times you'd need to like lock things hand in hand are when like API changes happen, which, you know, may or may not be often, depending on what type of features are being worked on or changes. But like one of the, I guess, challenges that I think that has been a thing, at least in the past, is, someone contributing specifically to the collection because maybe they're, more on the Ansible side in like, module writing and stuff like that, is the the challenge of, that repo is ginormous in the sense of it has thousands of issues and hundreds of PRs. And so it sometimes gets lost, it feels like, amongst the other pieces because of that. And also there have been times where like tests may be failing and stuff when, it's not even related to, because you're just, trying to contribute to the collection, and, a test fails on, some other component or whatever because of some other change potentially, or I don't know, whatever. And so I don't know, that was why I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of points there, and I think, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with them. On the stuff getting lost in all the issues and PRs, I mean, that's a real issue, and it's the downside of running some popular projects. Before the repo split, so before we moved to collections, Ansible was in the top 10 of most active repos. That was out of 98 million repos on GitHub. It's an absolute pleasure, but I had to sort of maintain all that stuff, and it's a pain. We use GitHub labels a lot. I think we have a GitHub label for collection changes. So if you ever want to find other collection related changes, issues or PRs, they're normally tagged. Sorry, yes, Jay, we're number 7, not number 8. But yeah, code stability and stuff is definitely, we need to improve the testing of around the AWX repo, and that's all for all of this. How?
So yeah, let me address a couple of things that Daniel mentioned, right? So Daniel mentioned that sometimes when there's a collection change, other bits that's not related to collection fails. And like, for example, the AWX operator test might fail. Yes, we do have flakiness within our CI, and sometimes it's caused by us, sometimes it's caused by, let's say, other Quay going down, or CentOS mirrors having problem, or our own code's fault, right? So like, we definitely need to focus on tackling those problems, making sure that our CI is solid and serve as a clear signal of whether something breaks. I personally really enjoy having the AWX collection tests being in the AWX repo. And I don't know if you all see, I think about 6 months or so ago, one of our engineer, Rick Elrod, enabled like all the collection tests, right, as part of our upstream CI. And because of that, we were able to catch a couple of legitimate bugs and regressions. So I really enjoyed that part. So in the future, right, even if we split out collections tests on the AWX repo, it will probably still be tested against AWX PRs and changes, and also vice versa. Because like David, as I saw in your COP repos, right, you stand up a development environment, and you test your collection against that development environment, right? So something like that would still need to happen if we end up splitting. Does that help?
No, yeah, and I mean, and that kind of goes back to like one of my reasons on my first comment about how long it takes to try to test that, and that's one of our challenges. We've had a lot of timeout, or our tests take 30 minutes sometimes to spin up the environment to then try to, you know, test change on our collection stuff. But yeah, I mean, I definitely understand, and there definitely has to have the connect, like the need of the testing between the two sides for sure. I just thought potentially contributing to it might make it simpler if it was in its own, but I don't know. I can see the pros and cons to it.
It's certainly something that we will evaluate going forward. Yeah, if you see, like, I know your repo have CIs that stands up AWX, right? If you see it flaking, feel free to reach out. We can take a look. But yeah, Quay, CentOS, Galaxy. There's a lot of external dependencies that we have that could potentially have a bad day. All right, that's it.
Cool. Anything final? Cool. Yeah, really appreciate everyone's time today. Great discussion. I'll say it again. Go sign up at forum.ansible.com if you've not already done so. We'll look forward to continuing the discussion there. Cheers, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, friends.
Thanks. Bye-bye.